Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from today. It is, of course, 3 p.m. here in the UK and it's 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And you're all most welcome to join us here at 0 Days Live. Hello there, everybody. Of course, today is Fun Friday. And this is episode 32 of our 40 live shows. Time has flown by. And in case you were wondering, today we are embracing National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day and Pizza Party Day with esteemed journalist Dan Swinhoe from CSO Magazine, who will meet in a few moments. And I do notice that I put a lot of effort into today's costume. I do embrace the pizza delivery vibe as part of the Pizza Party Day. Do notice my badge can't really be seen very well there, so I'm going to get a bit closer because I did actually make a bit of an effort with this one. So there we go, 0 Days Live pizza service. You'll see that I am 5-star delivery, so expect nothing less. Hello there, everybody. My name's Stuart Reed, of course, and I'm with Nominet, focused on cyber solutions. And as usual, I'm in the chair today, as every other day, to welcome our special guests to each of our live shows. Just a quick reminder, Nominet, of course, is primarily responsible for managing the .uk domain space, which we've been doing for over 23 years now, and with something in the order of 15 million domains currently under management. And building on this strong heritage of understanding the importance of domain names for network connectivity, we also provide cybersecurity solutions to protect both government and enterprise networks worldwide from cyber attacks, including providing service to the UK government's National Cybersecurity Centre. And of course, ensuring people are able to be connected, included and secure is at the heart of what we do at Nominet. And it's important perhaps now more than ever before as we find ourselves in very strange situations. And with that in mind, we want to bring you an interactive show to bridge that gap that's potentially been left behind by the lack of physical meetings taking place right now, and bring you 0 Days Live for everybody with an interest in or from within the cybersecurity community. As always, I'm joined both front of house and behind the scenes by a highly capable team, making sure everything runs just the way it should, albeit remotely. And again, I'd like to make a special mention to those that are behind the scenes. Of course, regulars will know that we see Steve and Kerry on our daily shows, but we've also got Jason, Lucy, Lizzie and Lindsay behind the scenes, making sure everything runs just the way it should, doing an excellent job for us. And as always, this week is no exception. We are asking a burning question. This week's question is, what have you done differently in lockdown and that you want to continue afterwards? So please do let us know by simply typing in to the questions console on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, for me, quite fortuitously, on my morning walk today, I saw this, and we should be able to get a look at that in just a moment. And it really was something that, for me, sums up all the good stuff that has come out from lockdown. Of course, it's very easy for us to concentrate on all the negative elements, of course, that are associated with lockdown. But this, for me, I found really quite endearing. We're all sharing these unprecedented times right now together, and connecting with others in such a positive way is something that I'd really like to see continue, even if that means from a distance or digitally right now. So again, a look at that. It was by somebody called Gemma. So well done, Gemma, for that. I actually found that quite endearing, so I wanted to share that all with you all today. Steve, what have you got for us?
Hi Stuart, I just before we go into mine, I do hope you washed your hands thoroughly after taking one of those. Good to see you adhering to that.
I washed before, after, and of course I thought you were asking me about whether I washed my hands before I was preparing pizza, which of course the answer is yes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And
that's
speaking of pizza and cookies, Steve, before we get to the burning question, what have you got? I've not seen you've made much of an effort today.
Well, I've got my cookies that were very kindly sent to me by the Nominet cyber marketing team, so thank you very much for those. I haven't opened them yet. They've been sat there for a while.
Very disciplined of you. So tell us, what is it you want to see continue outside of lockdown?
I think for me, it's making time. I don't know about you, but I know lots of people have said about the kind of extra time they have. I don't find myself with an awful lot of extra time. I've saved myself a little bit on the the commute to work, perhaps an hour a day. But I think just making time to learn new things, to do things that we probably normally wouldn't have done if we hadn't been on lockdown. So I think for me, it's continue to make time for doing other things, learning new skills, and perhaps trying new things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And one thing that I never thought I would do on lockdown was dress up as a pizza delivery person. So,
Prime example.
every day's different, for example.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for that, Steve. And of course, everybody tuning in, thank you too. This show really just isn't the same without you all tuning in. And we're delighted to be welcoming both our regulars and also new audience members each and every day as we build out our accessible community to bring people together, hear from others in the industry, get a roundup of what's going on, share some thoughts on best practice, and of course, interject a little bit of good humor along the way as well. Now, with that in mind, we do cover a lot of important subjects, but clearly we don't take ourselves too seriously. And as a quick reminder, for each of our 30 shows, each of our 30 minutes or so shows, we're now on 32, as I mentioned earlier, we are absolutely live each and every day. And there's bound to be a few mild blips along the way. And if they do, when they do happen, we just hope that's part of the endearing reasons you tune in to spend your time with us, and thank you for choosing to spend your time with us as well. Now, also remember that if you aren't able to join us for whatever reason, we are of course here on demand for your convenience to do so. Just check us out at nominetcyber.com/0dayslive. And again, please do get involved. This is your show. It's not the same without you. So if during today's show or any of the other live shows that you join, you want to ask a question, give us a comment, please do so using the console on your screen. And Kerry will read them out during today's cast. And speaking of Kerry, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you, Stuart.
I'm a little bit worried. I seem to be the only one that's really embraced the theme today. What have you got for us, Kerry?
Well, I have a philosophy in life. It goes like this. If you mess up your baking, present it on a nice, beautiful Moroccan plate.
Okay.
So this is my giant chocolate chip cookie on what is a beautiful Moroccan plate. As you can see, it's not really gone to plan. I didn't have the exact ingredients in the house, and I'm not a baker, so I thought, well, I'll just pop a bit of that in, a bit of this, and see what happens. And yeah, it's got mini eggs for its chocolate chips. It tastes a bit more like a cake, and I think I used too much butter. But all in all, it's quite good.
To be fair, Kerry, when you first showed that, I thought it was cheese on toast. So
Definitely cookie, definitely.
I'm going to stick to these, I think.
Yeah,
I know you said this was a poor effort, but
yeah,
I think I'd rather risk.
There's got to be 11 out of 10 for the effort there, Kerry. But yeah, the result of that, I think, yeah, Steve's probably onto a winner with the pre-packaged cookies that he's got. But anyway, what is it you want to see continue outside of lockdown, Kerry?
So similar to I think what you were saying yesterday, and Sam, our guest, I've fallen in love with my house during this lockdown period. I've only been here a year. There was lots I needed to do, and it was just a place that I kind of stayed rather than lived in. And obviously, I've had to make it my home during this time. So just hope that I can continue that, and it continues being a great place to be.
Excellent, very good too. Thank you for that, Kerry. As I mentioned a few moments ago, of course, I'm very pleased to welcome to our virtual studios today for our Fun Friday edition, Dan Swinhoe, who is journalist at CSO Magazine. Welcome to our virtual studio, Dan. How are you today? There we go. Hi there, Dan.
Very good, thank you.
Excellent, good to have you on the show, and what better day to come along than to help us celebrate National Chocolate Chip and Pizza Party Day. I bet you never thought before lockdown that you'd be taking part in something quite as auspicious as this.
No, it is a momentous day. I would share some cookies, but I've eaten them all. Sorry. They were hard to resist.
That's what the day's all about, so I'll have to let you off for that one. But first things first, of course, you've heard what we would like to do or continue outside of lockdown that we've had to do in lockdown. What is it for you, Dan?
To be honest, this period hasn't been one of great self-improvement, but I've been locking down with my girlfriend and her family, and I've learned some basic Polish through card games and such, so maybe that would be something to carry on.
Okay, excellent.
Very much toddler level Polish right now. I can point at a few objects and say what they are.
Well, Dan, you've still got time to brush up those skills, so plenty of time yet. So good, finding a new skill to invest your time in. Excellent. So of course, Dan, as you probably be aware, being an avid viewer, I'm sure, of the show, today is our Fun Friday edition, and we do have a bit of a tradition on our Fun Fridays, which is all around socks. So if we can see the list of everybody's socks on screen, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take off my hat now because it does seem a little bit out of place. But you can see on screen here, Dan, that we've got 4 pairs of socks. Now, clearly, this is one that we did a little bit earlier, and you are also already aware of which your own socks are. So you are at a little bit of an advantage here. But if we go from left to right, whose socks do you think are whose? So if we start with the first one on the left-hand side, whose are they?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't think they're yours. Or maybe they are yours. There was a cat on in the green room beforehand that wasn't on your screen. So perhaps yours is the cat. Yours is the dog.
Interesting. Good powers of deduction there, actually, Dan. I have to admit, yes, those are my socks. That is indeed my pet dog as well that wanted to get in on the act, as most people do now. Audience members and pets alike are keen to get on this show. So that's my pet Barney showing off my my blue spotted socks today. So well done.
Very good dog.
So the next pair of socks, who do you think those are?
Well, I'm gonna go with Kerry's.
Kerry, is it you? Wow. Do
you
know what? I think you might be our first ever guest, Dan, that's got this all spot on. If as long as you can remember which pair of these remaining 2 are your own, then I think you could be onto a winner on this one. So who do you think the third pair is?
I'm 50-50, but I'm pretty sure they're mine. My gran was very proud that she got me those for Christmas.
Very colourful as well. I appreciate making the effort there. And speaking of effort, which doesn't seem to have made on the last set of socks we've got, that seem a little bit drab and boring, whose could they be?
They might be Steve's there.
Steve?
Yeah, poor effort to say they're probably my most boring socks that I've got, but I realised that I've shown all of my more exciting ones, so I am down to those.
Surely you've got enough for each of our Fun Fridays, Steve. Well, there we go. Excellent.
If it helps, I'm wearing them with shorts, so it does look absolutely ridiculous.
I don't know what to say to that, to be honest. So, but thank you for sharing, and well done, Dan. You ought to get a special award. I might even save a cookie for you as a reward. So,
that's very kind.
Of course, this week, as you're probably aware, Dan, being a journalist, it's been a bit of an interesting one, particularly for us on the show. We've heard about cyber in both the public and the private sectors, covering healthcare through to motorsport, and on to the work being done by police to encourage a stronger security posture. Now, I understand that your focus over the coming weeks is on how the cyber industry is going to be impacted by COVID-19 and what post-COVID-19 cyber world looks like. How do you think that the rush to remote working that everyone's kind of found themselves in now has had an impact on how we put the pieces back together and assess the security posture of the organization?
I think it has been a mad rush, and every company's always had probably some work from home policy, some technologies for it, but it's I would like to think that because of this, it becomes not just the norm, but like on par with working in an office. Companies that I've heard a lot of things about, considerations that aren't in any normal work from home policy, about make sure your children or your neighbors can't hear you on the phone if you're talking about sensitive stuff. Don't let your kids watch YouTube on your corporate device, even if they are screaming the house down. You know, these little things that probably weren't in policies and considerations before. I think we need to just formalize working from home a lot more than we did before, because, you know, now working in an office is optional for many. I think it's been proven now. Productivity hasn't dropped. People can work more flexibly, and I think that's going to have to be really taken into account. And going forward, you know, every technology decision, every process decision has to include that kind of, what if you're doing it from home? How does that factor in? I imagine there's a lot more sensitive data suddenly sitting in people's houses on old devices that aren't very well patched, and that needs to be a lot taken into consideration a lot more than even during that kind of first wave of BYOD.
And I guess also, I mean, we've seen a rapid acceleration of people working from home, and the technology to support that. Do you think there's going to be an increase in digital projects caused by the fallout, if you like, of COVID?
I'm not sure, to be honest. You know, a lot of the sort of early surveys are suggesting there's going to be some bad economic times ahead. There's going to be some budget cuts, and I think maybe there won't be less projects, but there'll be cutbacks in certain areas. You know, like the big transformational things might be on hold, but kind of smaller, you know, the core migrations, the things that really need to be in the cloud or accessible remotely. I imagine there'll be quite a lot of focus on zero trust over the next year or so. I think what the priorities will probably definitely change. I think there has to be. And like I've said, budgets might be impacted. So I think there'll be a lot more focus on doing more with less, getting the basics right, although that's a very broad topic. Yeah, things like that. I think they'll be doing more with less. Automation will probably be a big deal as well, as people might have to kind of deal with less headcount.
And you touched on it there, but, you know, do you think there is much discussion taking place around how potentially cyber investment changes? So you mentioned kind of more with less, but do you think there's going to be more budget that's associated with it? And how does that compare if we are going to be hit by a recession, for example?
I mean, we've had the good times. I think, you know, all the studies suggest most companies year on year have had increased budgets. I think this year there'll probably be a freeze at best, unless you're you know, in a very lucky position. I think it was PwC have done a lot of CFO studies, and they're saying cybersecurity is going to be cut kind of last, if like IT first, digital transformation second, cyber third. So, you know, hopefully CISOs aren't too badly affected, but you know, I wouldn't be having my eyes on the new shiny toy. I think that period is gone for next year or so.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And for regular viewers, it's usually around this time that Steve pops up, either because he's got something insightful to share or because he's got a question. What have you got for us, Steve?
I've got a question for Dan, if that's all right, Stuart.
It is absolutely fine.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you think, when we look back on this period, organisations that haven't necessarily invested in cybersecurity solutions, do you think that's going to be a concern? You know, are we going to kind of look back and reflect and say, actually, you know, we made some mistakes there when we moved and we did some of this kind of digital? Are we going to look back and think that perhaps we could have done things a bit better?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there has been, you know, I've talked to some vendors, there's been a lot of panic buying. You know, a lot of companies have been throwing out free tools or free trials, and there will be definitely a lot of consolidation and hopefully a lot of learnings. I think, like any big cyber event, there'll be a lot written about this for a long while to come, and hopefully there'll be, you know, plenty more best practices, and people will learn personally. I think there's been a lot of webinars I've been on. There's been a lot of talk about leadership from a CISO perspective and how they've, you know, become more visible, and they've had to kind of do a lot more people management to keep everyone motivated. I think there will definitely have been mistakes, but I think there can be a lot of positives, not from the pandemic, but definitely from kind of a different way of working.
Absolutely. And do you think that CISOs are going to have different priorities post-COVID? now that we are kind of settling into what's possibly a new way of working from home?
To be honest, I'm not sure. This is something I'm like hoping to talk to people about in the near future. Is that kind of what comes next? What that like return to work look like? How those priorities do change. I think there'll probably be need to be a lot of scrubbing of devices that have suddenly been on unsafe networks for a long while. I think there'll probably be some immediate worries when people start coming back to work, but quite what those like medium-term concerns, I don't really know, to be honest. I think it depends on the organization and how prepared they were beforehand, and what emergency measures they've put in.
Sure.
Great, thank you. And Kerry, at this point, is there any questions that are coming from the audience?
Yes, we've got one in from James saying, what's been the most interesting cyber-related stories you've seen coming out in this period, and how are they differing than pre-COVID?
I mean, everyone I've spoken to, especially on the vendor side, who said there is nothing that's different. This is all like phishing. It's just same old, just COVID themed. A lot more. We've kind of moved on from the initial virus to the vaccine, and now we've more on the stimulus side. A lot more stuff about furlough packages and help for small businesses and things like that. I mean, phishing isn't new. I talked to one CSO who said he's already had like email scams trying to be like, oh, we're making layoffs, click on this document to see if your name's on them. And these are legitimate fears. So there's been a lot more preying on kind of people's insecurities, and the CISOs I've spoken to about this have been very much like, you need to kind of be that calming presence. You need to remind people of the basics. You need to tell them, like, I know you're stressed, but don't fall for this. This is policy. If we do something like make layoffs, this is the process. Don't just click on any old PDF that comes through that scares you. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's easy prey right now for cyber criminals. They don't need to innovate right now. They just need to tweak. And nothing I've seen is particularly innovative. Those coronavirus heat maps, they were just laden with malware. That was quite interesting. But as a whole, they don't need to change much because everyone's a bit on edge that anything can set them off.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question from Matt saying, what do you think the security community will be most worried about after COVID?
After COVID, I mean, the recession, I think, should be a big, not only because of what that does to your internal business, but again, there'll be cyber criminals ready to pounce. Like I said, there's already been be and phishing scams around, stimulus packages, that will only go up. Anything, the cyber criminals tend to be more active in recessions. This is something I've written about and is going live soon, actually, as a piece looking at how fraud and phishing and insider threats as well, if you are making kind of layoffs, people try and grab what they can. That's a sad fact, but it's a fact. I think recession considerations, are your vendors at risk? Lots of small startups, studies already saying they're running out of runway. Are some of your vendors going to disappear? These are like risk considerations. There's no immediate worries, but you have to kind of be cognizant that there's a recession probably coming, or at least some difficult times, and that will impact what your threat landscape looks like. That is what I'm focusing on, to be honest, right now, and I think hopefully some CISOs will be aware that that's coming.
Thank you. That's it from the audience at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kerry, and thanks for the questions, of course, from our listeners, and of course your insights there is well done. Now, on a Friday, what we like to do is take a little bit of a look back on this week's news. So is there anything particular that's caught your eye this week, Dan?
For me, I think the Archer supercomputer was an interesting one. You don't hear much about supercomputing security because they're quite rare beasts, but from an attacker's point of view, they probably offer a novel challenge. I'm not sure what you can do with one. Maybe mine Bitcoin at an unheard of scale, but and probably steal research. But yeah, I think that's probably the most interesting one from my end, just for pure novelty value.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a number of news stories that are kind of quite varied, and some of them are quite novel. But actually, there's a theme that kind of underpins a lot of them as well, and it comes back to something you were saying earlier around getting the basics right and putting in those foundational pieces. So I think there's, you know, it helps every day on these shows. We are giving a wash up of the kind of the noteworthy news from a cyber perspective, but I think it's all of the kind of the roads are leading to ensuring that people are remaining vigilant, especially that they're more reliant now perhaps on digital communications than they were before. So getting emails through is commonplace, and probably more so now, making sure people are vigilant and not clicking on suspicious links or suspicious senders of those emails, to make sure that there's both the education piece, but also making sure that we're patching the systems, keeping our antivirus and such like up to date along the way as well. So it's interesting you touched on some of those areas as well, because they seem to be recurring themes. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Dan. We're going to now move on to the more light-hearted part of our week, which is of course asking you our fun Friday questions. So Steve, if I invite you back for this as well, because I may throw a couple your way as well. Got a few here then, Dan. Let's look at the first one. So what's your favorite isolation activity right now?
Been watching a lot of horror films lately. You know, I quite like those anyway, but I feel that that's been accelerated, you know, especially at the start of lockdown. There was a lot of pandemic related films, anything with a strong kind of an end of days vibe. Not sure what that says about me, but that was very much what we were doing for the first couple of weeks, for sure.
It's kind of yeah, a little bit too close to the truth in some respects now, isn't it? The horror is all around to a certain perspective. What's your biggest pet peeve of working from home?
I mean, mine's my setup. I've locked down with my girlfriend, like I said, and not having a good office chair and some monitors it's not impeded me, but it's just sort of made my back hurt. And I'm not sure how many more cushions I can sit on one chair.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Steve, what's your biggest pet peeve of working from home at the moment?
I think it's still got to be the proximity of the fridge to my office. That's my biggest pet peeve, because it's just too tempting just to keep getting up in between calls and grabbing something from the fridge or the cupboard.
I can totally relate with that one. That's one thing that I hope not to continue post isolation, is being tempted to perhaps indulge more than I should. Dan, what was your first job?
First ever job was a paper boy. First kind of contracted job was a trolley boy at Sainsbury's back when I was about 16.
Excellent, solid choice, and a lot of people will be able to relate to that, I'm sure. Give us an interesting fact about you, Dan.
Oh, I'm not sure there are any. You know, one I like to roll out occasionally is I used to have a very angry pet tortoise. She was very small but very bitey, and to the point the vet was shocked when it, like, we put it on the table and she ran towards me and made my finger bleed. The vet said she'd never seen that before, and she was a reptile vet, so it was quite alarming.
Gosh, was it something you'd said?
I don't know. I fed her regularly. You know, I did everything you meant to, but she just wasn't very thankful.
Well, sometimes you just meet people like that, I guess. What was your first car, Dan?
Car? I can't drive, so probably some sort of Matchbox toy, Diddy car toy.
All right, well, let's change it.
I'm a city boy, so I don't need to drive.
What would your ideal car be then?
Ooh, for my sins, I really like sort of big American muscle cars, so I've always said like a Dodge Viper or a Shelby Cobra.
Very nice, and a nice segue actually.
Those engine noises.
Nice segue to you, Steve. Speaking about big American muscle cars, what was your first car? Remind us.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Hyundai Pony. So it was a rather small Japanese cheap plastic seat thing, but it did have a go faster stripe that I put on it with masking tape, so that kind of made up for the cheapness of the car.
Showing your creativity from an early stage there, Steve.
Absolutely.
So that's all good stuff. Dan, finally, tell us what's your favorite piece of technology?
I'd say my CD player. My mum got me one when I was very young, and I still have it to this day. It's a big grey Sony thing. Goes with me every time I move house. Gets well looked after and well used.
Excellent, and I imagine it will go on and on and on as well. So excellent. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for joining us on our Fun Friday edition today. Hopefully you've had a good time, and also hopefully everyone tuning in found it insightful as well. So I appreciate you giving us your insights on the week's news, and also some of the developments that we expect kind of both now and moving forward post-COVID as well. So thank you very much, Dan Swinhoe from CSO Magazine. Now it's almost top of the show for us, but before we go, of course, we do have a quick wash up of the news from Kerry. So Kerry, what have we got?
Well, thank goodness that you've come back to me, because I have been sat here eating my cookie and there's not that much left.
So it can't taste that bad then, Kerry?
It actually tastes really good. I need to distance myself from this cookie quite quickly. But a research report from ISC Squared in Tech Republic highlights the skills gap in cybersecurity and states that it would take a 145% increase in the number of security professionals to fill these roles. The DNet reports that Alexon, a crucial middleman in the UK power grid, has fallen victim to a cyber attack. Internal systems were put offline and employees' laptops were impacted. And then finally, in Info Security Magazine, they report that the Ohio House of Representatives have voted through new legislation which will criminalise all hacking attempts, not just successful ones. Ethical hackers will be exempt from this new law. The bill also proposes stronger punishments for those who are found to be hacking.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kerry. And again, thank you very much for your time on the show today as well, Dan. Interesting news bites for us again. It's interesting. I mean, it's perhaps not new, the kind of the skill shortage gap. That's something that has probably been around for a while, but interesting the numbers that we're talking about. It seems to continue to grow. 145% increase in people needed to correct the skills gap, and it shows that it's still a big challenge, and it's not one that seems to be closing just yet either. Steve, what's your thoughts on the news today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the skills gap is an interesting one, because when certain vacancies go up, they have a plethora of people applying for them, but it tends to be that the kind of high-end roles, you know, the CISO type roles where you get lots of people applying. It's kind of the lower to mid-tier where they're starting to see that real skill shortage, and I think that's, you know, because potentially they're not the type of lessons and courses that people are taking at school, and therefore aren't moving into those roles. I thought the other thing was the Alexon, you know, with the power grid. It goes back to what we've been saying time and time again about getting the basics right. But absolutely. Also, I think, you know, it's worth kind of reflecting on the positive thing here, that it didn't actually have an impact on our critical national infrastructure. So clearly they were doing some things right in terms of, you know, making sure that their network was separated from the critical systems, etc., etc. So, you know, there are clearly some positive things to come out of that, as well as, you know, potentially negative, in that they've mitigated this risk through good planning.
Yeah, I think as well. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there. The NIST directive, like, this is probably the first time since that came into effect that we've had quite a public attack on a utility. I know the ICO has been said they're kind of going to be lenient during this time, but the NIST directive is enforced by different regulators depending on which kind of industry you're in. So it might be interesting to see what the fallout from that is. I know it didn't impact the delivery of energy, but it'd be interesting to see how they kind of what the regulator thinks about that.
Yeah, and I think it also, at very least, what it does is it underlines again the importance, perhaps now more than any other time of making sure that there's good kind of cyber hygiene around these things, especially as they do become increasingly critical for us as well. So yeah, good observations on that. So thank you. So that really is it for today, everybody, and indeed it is it for another week as well. So thank you very much for today's guest, Dan Swinhoe. And
Pleasure.
also to all of our other guests this week as well. We've had Yaron Levy, Shadi Razak, Gary Foote, Tamron Chappell, and Sam Parsons. And of course, we have had everybody here at 0 Days Live as well, and for all of you joining us at home too. So whatever else you do make sure that you enjoy celebrating National Chocolate Chip Cookie and Pizza Party Day. Kerry's already making the most of it with her homemade creation. I've got my homemade creations and a couple of deliveries to make as well. Have an excellent rest of the day and indeed the weekend, and see you all soon. Until then, goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.